Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan here for another hybrid podcast. Of course, we'll get into the film review from Sunday's 44-6 blowout win by the Eagles over the Lions, but a lot has transpired since then. Of course, the trade deadline is come and gone. We'll get into that, Adam. It was as typically uneventful as it tends to be, although Von Miller trading uniforms there and going to the Rams is a pretty big deal. It's amazing to think that Von Miller, Aaron Donald, and Jalen Ramsey are all on the same defense. That's what when you're aggressive and you're going
for it. Yeah,
that's a move right
100%.
there.
I mean, as the Rams Twitter account said, we're pushing our chips to the table.
Yeah.
As the late Jim Fossil said, many years ago, you're all in, we're pushing the chips in, you're all in or you're out. And they're in. As one team that played them preseason told me, there are 22 the 22 starters and no depth. They're just going for it, Yeah. That was a go for it move. There was very quiet on Tuesday. There's 4 minor moves, nothing. And I'll explain why we'll get in a couple minutes. But I got this from a general manager on Tuesday who explained to me why his team was quiet, and it makes sense in terms of compensatory picks. We'll explain that later. But look, it's. There were talks. We'll get into that also. We know that there's some stuff going on, which we could confirm and explain why it didn't happen. But it's interesting now. They're at the 8-game mark, so the Eagles are now in a week 9. We had our Monday morning show, which was interesting because you never know without being able to watch the tape or talk to people, watch the tape, what it looks like. But it sure sounds like, from what we were told, that ass kicking they gave Detroit showed up on the tape, which is really good to hear.
I imagine it was going to. I even rewatched it myself, and some of the things that I observed were shocking in some regards, and in many regards good for the Eagles. And we'll talk about that. Speaking of that trade with Von Miller going to the Rams, that's a good segue for me to say check out Adam Caplan's power rankings, our ITB NFL power rankings that are up on InsideTheBirds.com, because Adam has a new number 1. So you'll have to find out who the new number 1 is, who the old number 1 is, and where the old number 1 has now fallen, and of course where the Eagles are after finally snapping their 2-game losing streak.
I moved them up a little bit.
You did a little bit, as they say, a little bit. No, I didn't offend them. A little bit. So, all right. So Q&A will drop Thursday morning. Quentin Michael, Jason Avant, 6 a.m. I know they're very, very, introspective, I would say, or very pensive on the victory, and had some really interesting observations there as well. And of course, we're already getting in mode for our Sunday pregame show from 10 a.m. till noon. The Eagles will play the Chargers. It'll be myself, Adam, Greg Cosell, and Jason Avant. And we had a huge, I don't know if you noticed, we had a huge audience for this past game against the Lions. And I thought it would be the opposite.
Surprising. I know. I love it.
I didn't think anybody really cared to hear about the Lions, or the Eagles matchup.
Here's why. This is what, and I would hope that, I would think, based on our numbers, you're not so much watching for the preview of the Eagles. You want to hear the information from Cosell and Avant. Jason's teaching us. I mean, he gave us some incredible stuff on Sunday about, and Greg dropped something which actually could have been picked up by a lot of bloggers if they're listening. Greg talked about, and I asked him about what his tape study shows about the scheme, the offensive schemes in particular. And Greg had some really honest, critical comments just strictly from the tape, what the tape showed him. Right. The tape talks to him, as he says. And I asked him point blank. I looked at him because he was sitting to my left. And I said, hey, could these coaches do a better job of scheming? And he explained exactly what the tape looks like and why he thought that they could. I thought that was really
absolutely good. And really real quick, last year I thought we had a really educational show with Trey Thomas when it came to really breaking down offensive line, protections, blocking schemes, everything, right? And now with Jason on, we learn almost similarly about wide receivers, techniques, what they look for, how they get open. You just learn so much by listening to those two guys break down tape, and it's been phenomenal. So look forward to getting together with them on Sunday, previewing what's now kind of a big Chargers. Some people are think it's a big Chargers game because I guess the thought process goes, if you beat the Chargers, you start to see a little bit more potential in this team. And then the old P word, playoffs, comes into view. And look, the Eagles could make the playoffs. I mean, it's not going to take much. I don't see it happening, but
they're game out.
they're only a game out. Right.
Technically, because Minnesota's playing one less game, so the Niners. But the Eagles have the tiebreaker against Carolina, who's number 7. They're the last team in, so they're a game back right now with the tiebreaker. I understand. I get it. It's almost not worth talking now about that now because there's so many games left. However, why Geoff brought up is very simple. They're actually in it, no question. If strength of schedule really favors the Eagles, if you look at the rest of the schedule, we knew this months ago because once we saw Washington not looking very good, we're like, oh boy. And the division and the Giants being really bad, although they played a very competitive game against the Chiefs, but nevertheless, they're bad. They're 2-6. They're going to have the Eagles are going to have a chance to hang in here. So people can say what they want, 44-6, the same score as that 2008 game that we've referenced many times on the show over the years when they beat the Cowboys to get in, right?
That's right. Go figure, 44-6. That's right.
And then the Eagles had the first time in team history, I believe, back-to-back 22-point games. Like, you can't make this stuff up.
Well, this is on the heels of a couple, like, remember they played Seattle twice in 2019 and lost to them by the same exact weird score with like 21-11 or something like that, or 23. I forget what the final score was.
Bizarre. Yeah.
Same score both times. Very odd. There was one more point I wanted to make. Oh, so because people are talking about it, we'll address it. The playoffs. Sure. My only viewpoint is, and I'm not trying to be a downer on this, I'm just telling you my real feelings about it, is that making the playoffs is different now, obviously, than it used to be. I think the wisdom used to be that if you're a young team or a team in transition and you make the playoffs, that's a great springboard for the next year. And the next year you get this playoff experience. But now that they added the third wild card to make very average to below average teams make the playoffs, I don't think you're seeing that impact. Yeah, the Bears are a perfect example. They made the playoffs last year and they're not good this year. And then even better example is the Miami Dolphins, who went 10-6 last year, made the playoffs. And didn't they go 10-6?
It sounds right. That sounds right.
I thought the Dolphins won 10 games, and they were definitely a young team on the build-up, and then they're terrible this year. So the playoff experience didn't do much for them.
10-6.
Nor did it do anything for Washington, by the way.
Exactly. Well, they had a losing record, right? Washington was 7-9, and they won the division. Although, don't forget, they almost upset the Bucs. Taylor Heineke got on the map coming off the couch and ran all over the place, and they almost pulled off the upset. But
so I imagine their fans were like, "Wow, this is okay. We lost the game, but A, we made the playoffs. B, we got experience. C, we took a really good team to the wire. Well, guess what? A year later, you stink. You know, that's the reality of it. I don't see the cause and effect anymore.
Momentum
that I think I used to when you made the playoffs with either a losing record or just snuck in.
Yeah, it was 17-9, by the way, with the scores 2 years ago.
17-9. That's right.
Both games. What are the
both
chances?
Games? Yeah, you won't see that too often.
No.
All right, let's talk about some transactions that took place over the last 24 to 48 hours. Obviously, the big one is the Eagles were participants in the trade market there right before the deadline. Hold on to your seats. They acquired the legendary Kerry Vincent Jr. from the Denver Broncos. He's a cornerback. He was a 7th-round pick this year of the Broncos, and he went to LSU. So I guess he was a teammate of Jacoby Stevens, the Eagles' 7th-round pick, right?
Yep.
Although he opted out, so he didn't play last year.
He didn't take Gowan, which is odd.
And yeah, that's right. Tay Gowan also, McGowan, Tay Gowan, right? And also an LSU.
He opted out last year too.
All right. So the Eagles are doing two things. They're taking one dart and throwing at this big board of cornerbacks that played at LSU or defensive backs that played at LSU. But no, seriously, in all seriousness, obviously the Eagles if you look at their roster of cornerbacks now, right, Adam, with Mac McCain, Tay Gowan, this guy that they just brought in, Kerry Vincent, Andre Chachere, who could be a corner or a safety. I mean, they're really just trying to get as many young cornerbacks who have great upsides, maybe great traits, and for whatever reason fell in the draft, and hoping that maybe one or two of them pans out. I think they have 8 corners on the roster right now.
Well, Nelson, McCain, Slay, Maddox, McPherson, Scott is 6, Gowan and Vincent. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And okay, so here's the deal. Vincent is twitchy. Here's the deal with Vincent. Here's our scouting report from two scouting sources. Twitchy guy, small guy, slot corner. I guess as one person said, I said, how about safety? Could you see him? He's too small. And he said, I haven't seen the guy, and I don't know how long this guy. I don't know when this guy saw him. He said, there's nothing in his body would say safety unless he's built his body up. Right. He is a nickel corner. He's small but twitchy. He's just over 5'10", very competitive. He opted out last year, which didn't help him. So this guy probably, had he played last year, unless he was terrible, would have gone like the 5th round because he's small, but he's got talent. Like this, Tate Gallen is a height, weight, speed player who's got a long way to go. Where this kid Vincent, if you just graded the tape, I think some people would argue his tape is better than Gallen's.
Oh, that's interesting. So, I mean, yeah, that's part of the dart throwing. Maybe you hit on a guy and maybe he puts it all together and you got yourself a corner. I know also that you mentioned his speed. I mean, this guy was a member of the LSU track team and specifically on the 4x100 meter relay team that won a couple of SEC titles. So he was the lead leg of it. So obviously he's got some speed, which is interesting because most nickel corners, most slot corners are not fast, but this guy ran a 4.33 at LSU's pro day. So the other word that I got is he needs some coaching. He needs some hard coaching, as you'll typically find with guys who go on day 3 of the draft. Needs to be like completely focused and invested. And that's kind of a common theme of some of the guys that they've acquired over the last few years in either as rookie free agents or later in the draft. You'll remember 2 years ago, right? Even after drafting Jalen Reagor in the first round, they went with Quez Watkins and they went with John Hightower. And I think they even that year signed a rookie free agent wide receiver. So it's part of that dart throwing. You hope that something good happens. Oh, Travis Fulgham is the guy that they want to bring in.
Right. There you go. Yeah. Well, they claimed him. Right.
They claimed him. Right. They were just adding at a position that they needed bodies at and hoping something hits. And clearly Hightower, I sense that they must believe that there's better days ahead for him, that he can be something, because once again, they protected him on the practice squad along with, Jordan Howard, obviously Richard Rodgers and Elijah Riley. So you've brought this up all the time that it's weird that they have protected him week after week after week. That's got to mean something.
It must, yeah, because the thing, as we outlined last fall, is that Hightower had significant maturity issues. Either he's growing up, they're seeing something in practice, because the only way they can evaluate him 2 things: when he's in their building and what he does on the field. And it's clearly good enough that they want to keep him around, because you want to make sure you have the right guys in their locker room, in the receiver room, so to speak. So, and LaRaven Clark, they basically, the way I understand is they're really not looking at a guard anymore. He's basically a tackle who could play right or left. If he could play guard if they need him to, because he's done it. But they're pretty good at guard right now in terms of depth. And from what we understand, Driscoll's injury is relatively minor, so it shouldn't be very long, if at all. But they did cut Brett Toth, so I wonder. No, by the way, now if we're past the trade deadline, he would be waived anyway. His contract's not terminated. But after the trade deadline, at 4:01 Eastern on Tuesday, every single NFL player is on a roster. If you cut them, they are waived. Not the veterans are actually waived. They're not terminated. That's through the Super Bowl. Right. That's done. That's something of the agreement between the NFLPA and the NFL. They changed the rules many years ago to make sure that there wasn't anything funny going on. So that's what they're doing.
So that means a player like Deshaun Jackson, who would ordinarily would be cut, is actually subject to waiver wire.
Exactly, 34 years old. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's got to feel weird. And we'll see if somebody claims him. Certainly the Raiders, with the situation they're going through there with Henry Ruggs, which is just terrible all around. But you could see them potentially trying to fill that role.
They need speed
receiver with Deshaun Jackson. I think a couple of teams will probably look at it, and
he's healthy.
Think about it. Sure.
The thing about Deshaun is, I know Van Jefferson's playing a lot right now, and Cooper Kupp's right now might be the NFL's best receiver. He's incredible. They're so deep in pass targets, and Deshaun, he had that one game where they're going bombs away. They took a lot of deep shots with him, but since then he hasn't done anything, and both sides are moving away, and they owe him, if he doesn't get claimed, $2.75 million. So it's a miss. They missed on that one.
Right.
And look, you take some shots sometime. As we said earlier to start the show, they are going for it, man. They don't care. They're going for it.
They are doing it. I kind of respect that. So we'll see. It's a great discussion we should have in the offseason with some GMs, maybe a Joe Banner, maybe even Ryan Paganetti, who we've had on through analytics, because when picks are very important. We talk about draft and development all the time. At the same time, the hit rate on draft picks is very low once you get out of the top 15. And the Rams were so good, they weren't going to be picking in the top 15. And then you start to talk about the success rate of second, third, fourth, fifth round picks, and they're low. So when you can trade picks for a proven player, especially of the caliber, right, of Von Miller, the analytics, the percentages would say you're winning there. But some people will, and rightfully so, will say, well, how long can you go without having first and second round picks? That's a lot. They've given up a ton of picks early in the draft. So it'll be a fascinating case study for the Rams to see where they go from here, and not just what happens this year, but the next year and the year after. I think it'll be really interesting.
I agree. And I want to get, I know Randy Mueller, who's a former GM, is out there. My friend Mark Dominic, who I work with at ESPN. That's a great point. But Mike Tannenbaum, who I know pretty well, because I always wonder, because I remember calling the Eagles at 17 at the trade deadline, and I had a great discussion with someone in the front office where they were looking at it and said, you know what, we kind of feel it. We're going to go for it. I didn't know it was going to be Jay or Jai. The person I spoke to said we're going to do something. We're deciding who that player is and what position it is, but we have certain scenarios going, because you don't want to. It's not like Major League Baseball where, okay, let's give up 2 farmhands. It's all different. You're giving up draft picks,
right?
You could give up players, but generally the teams that are out of it want draft picks. It's a fascinating discussion, and you got to be right about your evaluation of your team. You can't be so biased. You just got to be, okay, this is what our roster looks like. Well, I'd love to sit on a conversation like that. What those are like.
Did the Eagles make a trade last year at the deadline? I can't remember. Did they trade for some low level? No, they were 4-11, right? They didn't.
4-11-1.
Yeah. I can't. Because I know that they've been pretty. They make a trade at this year's deadline, not last year. The year before is the Avery trade. The year before that was the Golden Tate trade, and the year before that was the Ajayi trade, right? So you're looking at 4 of the last 5 years they've made a trade at the deadline. Now, it's not always been the biggest name, but it's been a name.
Denver, just real quick on Denver. George Payton, the GM, spoke on Tuesday. He basically said they would have kept him, but they've got, let's see, he said they got 2 corners, Michael Ojemudia, and who's a second-year corner, I think. And Bassie, another corner. They're both going to come back. Oh, Duke Dawson's another one. Right. He mentioned 2 corners. He said there's just someone had to go. And this was just something where they had it in abundance. Because what happens with trade calls, he didn't say it was Philly, but all 32 teams talk to each other within the last 2 weeks before the deadline. And they look at, okay, see anyone you like on our team. And if there's a player that is off limits, to go, we're not talking about him. You just take him off the list.
Right.
But then if you point out a player you like, and then you start the discussion going, rarely does this happen, but usually it doesn't happen the way it was explained to me. It's like it rarely happens on the first call. It might take several calls depending on the level of player. Sometimes it might get, on this kid that they got, it might have taken 2 calls. Okay, we're probably not going to keep him anyway. So yeah, you want to develop him. Hey, we like this kid, but we just don't have any room for him. There you go.
Right. Well, obviously, Adam, the Eagles trade deadline was more kind of, I guess, catchy for who wasn't traded than who was traded. So we'll get into that in a second. We've been telling you about getting an advantage over your sports book. And to do that, you've got to download BetQL, the only app you'll need to make smart bets. They've got that best bet computer model that scans over 350,000 unique bets a year to give you a best bet recommendation for every game across all major sports, and gives you the reason why you should place the bet. It covers everything from spreads to over-unders, player prop bets. And if you don't want to use the model, they've got all the research that you can need, all the tools for your betting research needs, from sharp data to line movement, team summaries, lineup and injury breaking news, even a leaderboard to track your success. So go to the App Store or Google Play Store now and download BetQL. You can also go to try.betql.co/ITB to get started now. Just enter the discount code ITB at payment checkout for 25% off their subscription offerings. They've also got a sportsbook offers page if you live in one of the eligible states to claim free offers upon signing up at one of the many sportsbooks listed. So don't miss out on the chance to beat your sportsbook this football season using BetQL. All right, again, the big news is the non-news, the lack of news for big name news for Eagles. I mean, there were guys that we talked about who might get dealt. Andre Dillard, we said very unlikely because we thought Howie would have to have his socks knocked off really to make that move, and Fletcher Cox's name was out there. We thought maybe with all their linebackers something might materialize, and I'm trying to think if there was any other position or player that we spoke about. Well, I did bring up safety just because, with Marcus Epps playing well and Kevon Wallace coming back, they've got some bodies there now at that position.
Epps is playing. I don't know how well he's playing, but he's playing.
Well, he played a good game against the Lions the week before. Yes. I would say not, but yeah.
No.
Yeah. So, but in the end of the day, nothing happened as far as a trade and a movement.
Right.
But there were certainly conversations. Go ahead.
Oh, ton of. No, I was just going to say with Cox. I mean, I know others reported it. What our understanding was, the teams knew I guess they get news clips. Like all these personnel people I spoke with knew about the Cox situation without even being in Philly. They knew he doesn't like the scheme. He didn't ask for a trade, but he has not been happy with the scheme.
Right.
I know he had said publicly that as a leader, he needs to, keep his emotions in check and do a better job of handling all the challenges with this thing. It's just different. It's just different. I'm sure when Chip Kelly was here with Billy Davis running that scheme, they ran a 34. I don't know. He didn't say anything then that maybe you remember. I don't remember him complaining about it. But the point was, he was had a lot of conversations with teams. It's just my sense is that because this is just the way I read on it. The Eagles restructured his contract. They converted his base salary into signing bonus. They're responsible for that money.
In September, by the way, right? It was it was only about a month and a half ago that they did this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Fair point. So the fact that they just pay that they're responsible for that, I don't know how much it was deferred. Typically, you defer signing bonus payments. You might pay half now and half in next year. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at the situation, there were a lot of I'm telling you, there are easily 4 to 6 teams involved. Like they're now different levels. So it might have been cursory conversations, more intense conversations. The Eagles obviously were listening, more than listening. I don't think anything. Obviously there wasn't anything close to being done, or probably would have gotten done.
Right.
But they had in-depth conversations. You and I talked to some teams.
Yep.
My sense is the Eagles wanted more than they were willing to pay these teams in terms of compensation back, because it's complicated, as you said. They just restructured. They're paying the cash. So if I'm the Eagles, I don't even know how this has worked, because I don't remember this ever happening before. I remember the Seahawks got the Texans to pay Clowney's contract, base salary one year, just to get Clowney, because Bill O'Brien wanted him off the roster. Just crazy. Right. But I don't, with the signing bonus payment, I don't know if the Eagles say, well, you have to pay the deferral. I'm just saying hypothetically. Let's say it was $7.5 million now, $7.5 million we have to pay in, January. You have to pay it, which doesn't change. It doesn't change the cap number. The signing bonus proration stays with the team that signed him to it. But in terms of the deferral payment, they could have done that, but it doesn't help them change the cap number. So it just, they lowered his cap number to the minimum base salary. So that from a team, you and I were talking about this like 10 times the last week. If I'm the GM who wants to get Cox, I'm loving this. You cut his salary down to just over $1 million, right?
Yeah.
So tradable contract for them, but not so much for the.
Well, and I can only imagine that factors into Howie Roseman's thinking. I have no idea what he hasn't had a press conference or anything like that and talked about it. But if you're gonna take a $25 million cap hit on a
whatever
player,
it is, we're not exactly sure what it is,
or at least $25 million. Yeah, it could have been more, but I don't think it would have been any less than that. But it would have been sizable.
I've seen different accounting for it because of the Eagles are the only team that insists on option bonuses. They're the only. I've talked to hundreds of agents. They're the only team now in the last couple of years because of, I think it's Bryce Johnston. I can't say 100% sure if it's his idea, But I know this: he's been championing these option bonuses. You kind of have to do it if you want to do a deal with the Eagles, and they're pretty generous with. They do fair deals, fair market deals generally with extensions. But there's certain ways to manipulate the cap that they want to do deals, and if you're going to do a deal with them, you're going to have to do these option bonuses. Right. You go back to 2017. Fletcher had. I'm looking at Fletcher's. He's had this contract redone. Wow. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, in September, just about 14 million of his base was changed to a signing bonus for cap reasons, and no money was added. And his agent Todd France and the Eagles did this deal, and obviously, as you know, they're dead. They're dead years in the back end. They're dummy years for proration purposes. So it's kind of complicated because he's got an option bonus next year, which is fully guaranteed. That plays in. It's complicated. I just the accounting.
But either way, no matter what, it's
a lot of money.
It would have been a hit. So if you're going to take that kind of a hit, you're not going to give him away for a 5th round pick. I mean, you might as well either, if you're going to pay him, you might as well play him and try to work it out and hope things go better, or you get something very good in return for the cap hit that you're going to take. So he's still on the roster. That can only lead me to believe that they didn't get the offer that they were looking for.
That would be my evaluation of the information you and I got on Tuesday.
Right.
My
information was there were some, like you said, I probably at least 3 to 5 teams that had a conversation with Howie, but I don't know who the aggressor was. I don't know if that's Howie calling them up or that. I mean, trade talk, because these guys call each other all the time about 100 different players, and then other names came up. So it's hard to say a guy is either being shopped or being sought after. I think in this case, it's probably both. I mean,
there are two teams. There are 2 teams, one in the NFC and one in the AFC. I know. Again, you're right. There's no way to know 100% who the aggressor was, but I know these teams really like Cox. They had a need for it.
Yep.
But hey, we'll never know. We'll never know how close it came. I'm sure that they may or may not be reporting on it, but it's always an evaluation because the club will give out information, and sometimes I have to, when a team gives me information, when they say, "Oh yeah, they were all over us for this player," sometimes there's exaggeration. So I always like to get a second source on that stuff. Hey, where were you guys on this? Because I'm hearing they're saying that you guys were really hot and heavy for the player, and then they'll say, "Whoa, no, we did call, but once we found out what they wanted, we backed off." You just don't know sometimes.
Exactly.
So
did you think that anything might happen at linebacker just because they're starting to streamline their process there? And
there was definitely interest in Alex Singleton. I'm not saying a ton. There was I know there was at least one AFC team that was looking into for their scheme. A guy like Singleton, it didn't go anywhere. I just know that they had some interest in him. That's when I said it on one of our shows that he might be moved because we knew that his role was going to be chopped a little bit.
Right.
We didn't quite understand at the time we found out 10 days ago exactly what that would look like. Because remember, he played one more snap than all the other linebackers 2 games ago. Then what we had heard prior to this game was he'd be playing in passing situations, but we didn't know what that would mean against Detroit because they're so bad. So what would that look like? And it would wind up being T.J. Edwards, who we'll get into that, the next part of it when we get the tape study in a minute. But it's just interesting. Alex Singleton's their best linebacker. I know T.J. Edwards is playing well now. He's really come on. Singleton, as one guy told me from who watched Eagles tape recently, he goes, "Man, if Philly played 3 linebackers, he'd be their 4th linebacker. So because they play 2, you'd rather be their 3rd."
Right.
But the problem is they don't really have a starting level linebacker. Is the way this guy put it. I was like, yeah, I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah, it's pretty patchwork. I think that's fair to say. I still see Alex Singleton and TJ Edwards as overachievers, I guess, or somewhat of a success story, because what are the percentages of rookie free agents that play 2 or 3 years in the NFL? And they have improved, I think. We'll kind of get into that more when we do our defensive review. But as an overall, both of those guys give you tremendous effort. They work hard. They've improved since they've gotten here, and they'll leave here someday better than when they came, which is not what you can say for a lot of other positions on this team. So I think that overall is a nice story, but what's that gotten the Eagles in the long run? Not very much. So, I mean, the criticisms of their approach to linebacker remain the same as far as that goes. All right, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code ITB. Bet just $5 on any NBA team to win its game, and you'll win $200 in free bets. If the team wins, you win with promo code ITB this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an authorized sports betting partner of the NBA. So why don't we start off with the Eagles? Even though we just talked linebackers, we'll start off with the Eagles offense. I'm going to be the biggest jerk in this episode because the Eagles scored 37 offensive points, right? Or 30. Yeah. They scored 30 or 38 offensive points, and they were fantastic. But there is one observation I'm going to make, and I did run it by a few people, and they agree that that will probably be a little bit of a downer. But I don't want to start off with that. So let's just talk about something great. The plan we saw early against Las Vegas that they were not able to carry out because they fell behind so quickly. You saw work the entire game basically against the Lions, which was more under center downhill running. And Adam, I'm sure, without even asking you to hear from sources, I watch that. You can see guys like Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata pushing the Lions back. It's great. If you love football and you love smash mouth football, that was
taking it right out of my mouth, man. That's exactly. Go ahead. That's exactly what I was going to say.
I think that was a big joy to watch for 1 week.
It's funny. There's one pro personnel guy. His team's playing the Eagles very soon, and he's been telling me like for 6 weeks how bad this team is and how he just doesn't like some of the players they have. And so I called him, I guess, Tuesday afternoon amongst all this other crap you and I were dealing with the trade deadline and all that. Try to sort through what's real, what's fake, all that stuff. So anyway, he's like, man, he goes, Philly, someone must have gotten Nick Sirianni's ear. He goes, they were actually running a real offense. Like, oh, I know, weren't they? He goes, they kicked a bleep out of Detroit. They should have been embarrassed by the way that they played. They got moved off the football. It looked like a JV team compared to the way that Philly attacked them. And I was like, that's good to hear. I was like, I like hearing this because I said, we tell my friend, I said, we do this Eagle show, and it's hard to watch bad football. It's depressing, and sometimes I dread doing the show. I'm like, here we go again. Got to be negative. It's our job to tell the truth.
Right.
I was like, you know what? We're going to look forward to talking about this stuff because it's such an ass kicking, and I understand it's the Lions, and we typically we isolate each show as its own. Okay, this is who they played. This is what it looked like. This was the biggest ass kicking of their offensive line has given in 2 years. I know there were some games last year that they played well, but this was embarrassing. Lions looked like a JV team compared to the Eagles' offensive. Their defensive line got moved, double teams, you name it. Jeff Stoutland had it all going on, and Landon Dickerson looked like a top 10 pick in this game. He absolutely killed them.
Yes, he did. In run blocking, he was a monster, just a monster. And then there were times where he and Jordan Mailata, there would be a run to the left.
He looked great too.
And those guys were like two bulldozers just going through, a field of, like small, tiny trees, just knocking them down, bang, bang, bang. It was. Think about the juxtaposition of coaching philosophies here, because it was Nick Sirianni's team that was literally eating the damn kneecaps of the opponent. And that's what the Eagles were doing. They were eating their kneecaps.
Good call. I forgot about that.
It was a damn buffet of kneecap eating for the Eagles. And I can only imagine
how humbling. By the way, so you might as well explain that because there's some people we're getting a good amount of new listeners every week.
That's true.
Some people are not familiar with what Dan Campbell said. So
in his introductory press conference, Dan Campbell said, and listen, it was a great press conference. I mean, he said, this city Detroit has been kicked around too much, and we're going to change the culture. And somebody's asked me what kind of team we're going to be, and we're going to be the type of team that kicks people in the teeth and eats their kneecaps. That's what he said. So we've kind of played on that a lot. The guy comes from the Bill Parcells tree. So, there's going to be a whole lot of, blue collar, lunch pail, screw you, we're going to pound you into the ground attitude. And, I'm sorry. Their kneecaps got devoured by the Eagles over and over and over again.
It's funny. It's rare when you watch it on TV because, again, it's not a good way to evaluate, but you have what you have to watch. And on Verizon 5, so I slowed it down Sunday during the game just to see, I just wanted to take a look at a couple some of these runs where I go, holy bleep, what?
Mm-hmm.
They just moved these guys. And my buddy said, he goes, dude, it was just. And he loves Mailata, this guy. So he said Mailata, a couple plays where he just picked the guy up and tossed him. I said, I've seen this before. I said, okay, that's good. I said, I'll watch the tape later this week and I'll look. Just some other notes that we took. Yeah. So Hurts, a good thing. The other thing is, we were talking about it a second ago. Love seeing Hurts under center again. That it's so funny. You and I, we had asked Baldy and Avant the week that Greg was off for our Sunday show. Can't you do both? It's not running two offenses. You could have Hurts under center and also do shotgun and RPO, can't you? And they both said, absolutely. Well, that is exactly what they've done the last 2 weeks.
Yes, they have. And they really did it well. It's funny. I asked Shane Steichen at his press conference on Tuesday if this was actually going to be the plan against the Raiders, because clearly the first drive was like that. Had they not been, the game got out of hand and been ball controlled so much. True. And listen, these coordinators don't give you a whole lot of game plan truths, but he said, well, we wanted to do that, and we wanted to, and then he started going to everything's matchup based and yada, yada. But I do suspect that had that game turned out differently against the Raiders, we would have seen something similar to what you saw against the Lions attempted there. As far as the running game, I don't think their plan was to go under center for just the opening drive and then completely abandon it. Remember, they had the fumble. Like they just did not have.
They did for the first two, right?
Right. They did for the first two. And then the third drive, I think they mixed it up a little bit, but then they had a 3rd and 8 that turned into a 3rd and 13 when Dickerson false started. And then the next drive is when Gainwell fumbled. And then the next drive was the opening drive of the third quarter that they didn't get the onside kick. So the Raiders literally had 3 consecutive possessions, and then that's where the game got out of hand.
One thing to add, and this is we need to probably start looking at this more. This is another game they low penalties, only 2 accepted.
Yes.
It's a rookie staff. There's no excuse for the lack of discipline that's on the coaches, but they're clearly getting through to players, and Sirianni talks about the fundamentals. He's got this. Okay, I believe him. I understand. I'm learning more about the staff and how you got to be patient. You don't have to like it, but there's certain things that they're doing a better job of, and the lack of discipline was an absolute disgrace. Just stupidity of some of the bad penalties, but I give those guys credit. They whatever they're doing, whatever the fundamentals are, whatever the coaches are doing to get on these guys here, good for them. They got it going on now. It doesn't matter. The penalties have nothing to do with the opponent. It's about how you handle yourself as a football player and techniques and all that, and also your discipline. And good for those coaches to get these guys to buy it.
Apparently, the fertilization process has gone well for the last 2. Everybody is doing their part to water and make sure that the penalties go away.
You knew that was coming. You had to do it.
I had to make it right. All right, Jalen Hurts. Yeah. So I think there's this prevailing thought that if you run an offense like this and you take the pressure off Jalen, have to throw 35 times a game, that you're going to see a way better version of Jalen Hurts. I thought you saw an okay Jalen Hurts, but there were still a couple of, in the few throws, he had 2 really nice throws, one to Goddard and then one to Devontae Smith on the right side. It was like a 20-yard gain. And what I liked about it the most is that it wasn't his first read. It was a cover, a one look from the Lions, and he looked the safety to the left side of the field and then came back to the right side of the field for Devontae. Awesome. Loved it. Thought it was great. But I think, and I'll ask you about your sourcing too in a minute, but there were still times, for example, there was a 3rd and something. There was a 3-man rush, Adam. There was a 3-man rush. The Lions drop 8, and he had a really nice clean pocket, and he wound up getting out of the pocket. There wasn't real edge pressure. All he had to do was climb the pocket, and he would have had Quez Watkins wide open on a deep crosser, but he ran out to his left and then tried to throw it to Goddard and yes.
If it's his play I'm thinking of, he rolled out to his left and he needed to square his feet.
Yep.
And he didn't. So he could have done it. I rewatched the play a bunch. He could have done it, but for whatever reason, he went with his body flow instead of a veteran would have done this the correct way. All you do is flip his hips, stay stationary, and hit him. And that was a play. You're right. That's a good call by you.
But he shouldn't have really ever left the pocket in the first place.
Initially, right?
Up 1 or 2 steps, because it was only a 3-man rush, and he had that inner interior cushion, and if he can step up and see Watkins getting deep in that zone open, it was a nice play call. It would have worked. It just, left the pocket early. So
can't do that. Mahomes who's really struggling. I know this is not a cheap show. Just to give you an idea of he's leaving so many plays on the field, Mahomes, more than he usually does, because he's a spectacular player. He's an elite talent. But this is, when guys aren't seeing it, when quarterbacks are not seeing it correctly, they'll move for no reason. And there's nothing in some of these plays where the coaches are telling him to move. It's not in the play. He just does it because he's not used to playing at this speed at the NFL level. And I brought up the Arizona game last year when things started to slow down for him. When he played with really good timing, he's not being able to do that. He just is not. The Atlanta game is completely different from that Arizona game. That was a different offense.
Right.
The Doug Peterson offense was based way more on deeper routes. It's way different offense than this. It's
sure.
Peterson's technically West Coast, but it's really not the way that the old Bill Walsh West Coast. And this thing is more West Bill Walsh than certainly Doug Peterson. But I don't know that we're going to see it. So it's a work in progress.
Yep. So there's really not much to say about receivers because there are only about 3 balls caught by wide receivers. Dallas Goedert had a nice game again. I think he's really starting to establish himself now that he's the top tight end.
And I was so glad because they had worked at the edges the prior game to the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
They ran more intermediate and crossers and deep overs. Smith, first play of the game, he drops it. Can't do that. Pass was there. Can't do it. Like the route combinations, I like, based on what I was told, the way they use Goddard. This is what we've been waiting for. Could you use him to be a beast down the seam? Could you use him to use his body to use leverage against the smaller defensive back, the smaller linebacker who can't stay with him? Yeah, they're starting to figure it out with him. So that was great. Really
love the tight end screen too. By the way, the slow developing one that went left and then first right. That was good.
That's the one that the Rams do with Higbee, where he hides behind the offensive line. That slow developing one, I was like, whoa, what is this? Oh, I see what it is.
Yeah.
The tight end delay. It was beautiful. Yeah. All right. I know it was a line, folks. I get it. But Geoff and I have been waiting all season to see it's a Lions. I always have to preface this, but in terms of offensive scheme and design, this is the best job the coaches have done. Now, they may argue differently. Hey, this game we did, and maybe the quarterback didn't do a good job. Fact of the matter is, from structure and design and execution by the offensive line, and aligning. You and I have complained about the lack of timing between just the disjointed part about their offense. This was not disjointed. This was everything was joined at the hip here.
Right. No, it was definitely good. They even used Jalen Reagor 3 times in the first drive, 2 carries, and then a quick shovel. That was nice too. And too bad he got the ankle injury because it sounded like he would have been a bigger factor.
Did you see his? It might have been on the one he almost scored. They called it back, but it might have been that one of the 3. One of them, his acceleration was second level. I was like, whoa! I know it was on the. It was on field turf. You could see the pellets come up, but man, Devontae Smith's something else in and out of his breakthrough. This kid, once he gets going, Reagor was explosive, and it sucked that he got hurt because the coaches. I love the way that they used him. I still want to see him run after the catch because he's so good. He's so explosive with the ball in his hands, and hopefully that'll come. We said that. Oh, the other thing is way less RPO. More natural. Here's the notes that I have: natural running game element, less RPO, more conventional runs, true inside and outside zones. One guy said to me, he goes, "They run fake. They ran. You wouldn't even call it. They ran college inside and outside zone before, not the normal conventional one that we saw in this game."
Right.
I loved it, man. This is the way they should look.
Let me ask you. I mean, is let's also acknowledge that this was way more one-dimensional that you'll ever see. This was not a balanced offense.
Blew him out.
This was
right.
like 70% running.
I get it.
But do you think that this now has to be their MO going forward? This much running, if they can do it?
No. Well, they're not going to be able. They're not. The game flow dictates the way the game goes. They annihilated them. They got up big, and they rolled, and they rolled, and we'll get to the defense. That was also a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But let's just say that we'll spin it just for 30 seconds to the Chargers, right? Let's say they're in the game. They're not down by more than 10. There's absolutely no way. There's no reason to think that Boston Scott and Jordan Howard, because it's very clear. This is another point we should mention. We only have one game blueprint without Sanders, but this is the way I see this going here. If the game is close, they'll have a more balanced offense. It's not going to be 70-30. I mean, it's not going to be 50-50 or 55-45. It's probably what I think is acceptable is 60-40, but mixing that run in. This is something we've talked about every week, and they don't do it until this game. If the game's close, to answer your question, there's no excuse for not running the ball. And this quarterback needs it. Jared Goff needs it. He cannot function without a run game. It's been proven both places. You got to know his coaches. You have to have, and you have it if you're there. You have intel on your quarterback. Hurts cannot function without a run game. It's obvious. We all know this. And give it to him.
Oh, and by the way, he had 3 scrambles that may have been the plays of the game. I mean, he was able to keep the chains moving because there were about two of them. He could have been sacked for a loss, including one was almost a safety that he got out of really early because Mailata got edged by Harris, Charles Harris, and he was in his crosshairs and he got out of it. Hurts did and scrambled and made yards forward, and not too many quarterbacks can do it the way he did that there. So that was pretty impressive.
The one run where it was in their own territory. He ran to the left and he did a zigzag. I mean, he had these guys falling over. I was like, man, that was a beautiful run.
Yeah.
Because he's not like explosive. He's a downhill power runner with really good vision. He has some acceleration, but he's not. I wouldn't call him fast, but he's got good size. He's 6'1", 220. He knows what he's doing when he runs with the football. And I was impressed with that part of his game. No question about it. Again, they only threw the ball, 14 times?
Right.
And just to finish this off, I'm going to say it again. Goddard going into the game was my player of the game for our pregame show. I know the Lions were not giving up production, but that is absolutely not the reason why you don't even, if you're the Eagles coaches, who cares?
Yes.
I get it. Everybody goes after the corners. Who the hell cares? You've got this dominant freak athlete, tight end. Get him the bleeping football, and they did.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, my 2 nitpicky points.
Go.
My first nitpick is if you're going to run all that downhill under center, running plays, that's pretty good time then to start trying your play action off of that, where you have Hurts fake the handoff and then throw the ball to somebody. I mean, I get the running game's working. You don't want to abandon that, but second half, you're up by 20 something. You can try it one time. I only saw them do one play action off it. And then the only other time where they used it as a play action was when he handed it off and then the ball got flipped back to Jalen Hurts and then he completed a pass down the field. But that was more like a trick play. So and look, maybe I don't want to step out of place here. Maybe that's the evolution. Maybe next week against the Chargers, you see a lot of under center and the Chargers thinking run, and then Jalen pulls it and turns around and gets the play action pass game going. But I just thought you would have seen some more of that.
Well, on what you just said, I cannot imagine that they're going to go back to running a college offense. I just can't imagine it. You now have and as you said on the Raider game, had the game not been out of hand, although I still would argue when they were down 17-7, you still could have run a more conventional offense. They now have the blueprint. So what? It was the Lions. You see how good you could. This, by the way, here's another thing. Okay, 2 things before we move to the defense. This offensive was so bleeping dominant. The Chargers, I understand the Chargers. Brandon Staley bristled to the media when they said his run defense is bad. He said, "Hey, but we got Jones back, the D tackle. Average per carry was down. Fine, but you could still run on this team.
Yeah,
there's no question they could come out." Get running in the first half when you typically throw more in the first half, you still can run the ball. And the other point I wanted to make is with this run game, for folks, if you get to watch the All-22, I was told it looks like this, and I could actually tell off TV, but it really looks like this off the All-22. Watch Boston Scott and watch the lack of contact within his first 5 yards of running the football. Apparently, it's ridiculous, the cavern that these offensive linemen created. And you don't typically get this in the NFL. You get it in college football because it's easier to move.
Right.
This was incredible. The job that these guys did. Kudos to Stoutland, all the linemen. It wasn't just all 5 starters beat the bleep out of the Lions. And now I totally know why Dan Campbell was disgusted. He was pissed off.
They got bigger on the offensive line when Driscoll came out and Nate Herbig came in, which is hard to imagine, but it's true.
Herbie.
And he played well too, Herbig.
Yeah, with all his weight loss, he's moving better. He's never going to be a better athlete, but he's moving better.
Yep.
This is fun to see, man. I'm really looking forward to watching a lot of this tape. It's gonna be fun.
All right, last nitpicky point, and again, this could totally be different next week, and you have to set up. We talked about sequencing, so maybe they're just doing that from week to week, but as good as the run game was, and as effective as it was, and as mauling as they were, their run game is very vanilla as far as what they do to run the ball. They don't pull. I mean, there was very little pulling of the guards or the tackles or even the center. Jason Kelsey's great at that. There was just very little every once in a while, the tight end will come across the scrimmage like a wham block, and
they played a lot of
rusher.
Boy, they played
a lot of 12 and 13 personnel.
In the first half, they came out doing it, and I forgot to say that, but so you didn't notice
that it's pretty easy to decipher that on tape if you're the Chargers or anybody. You should now stopping it's a different reason, but we talk. Look, I don't expect them to be Kyle Shanahan all night and doing all this misdirection and crazy stuff, but again, not a lot of motion. Not too much misdirection, not too much pulling, not too much trapping. It was just line it up. And they basically said, our personnel is better than your personnel, so we're just going to line it up and beat you. Now, that works against the Lions. Yeah, I don't know that can work against all the teams that they're going to play.
Right, because Richard Rodgers played 37% of the snaps, and they played a bleep load of not only 12, they played probably more 13 than they played all year, and probably will play all year, because the opponent, that plays into what you just said, exact to a T. We're coming in. This is what we're doing. We're imposing our will, and you're not going to stop us. And kudos to the coaches. I guess their advance, whatever their pro personnel stuff gave them, the Eagles, and then plus what their coaches saw, they went for it. So kudos to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get into the Eagles' defensive breakdown. A lot spicier stuff to talk about there. First, we want to tell everybody to go check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of Philadelphia sports teams for the fan, by the fan. That's their motto. So make sure you're checking them out on PHLSportsNation.com or on Twitter at PHLSportsNation. Let's pause real quick for a word from our other great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. All right, if you stop into Sky Motor Cars out in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal.
I promise you will get a great deal. Trust me.
Adam promise. It's the Adam Kaplan promise.
You got it.
The guarantee.
Read all of the reviews. Again, I've never seen this before of any business. Let's say they've had 500. I'm sure it's probably thousands. But one time when I was doing business with Brett Shoulder and Sky Motors, we had 2 car transactions. I didn't know the guy, so I was like, I want to learn more about him. And I just couldn't believe it. I've never seen such positive reviews in my life. I'm like, all right, I trust this guy. I don't even know him, but I'm going to do it. And we will learn we can trust him. He's a great guy and very honest and very helpful. And the people love him. The people who shop there. So it's good. It's all good.
Dude. Yeah, make sure you go check them out. All right, with the defense, I don't want to start with the defensive line. I don't think that was the biggest story, even though it looked like it on watching it. I thought the streamlining of the linebacker rotations, which I've probably been yelling about that for 5 weeks now, finally happened. What
do you mean by that? Yeah,
by having roles and not changing them around. And again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll have different roles next week. I don't think so. I think that they found the right formula. The right formula is playing TJ Edwards earlier and more first and second down. Remember, the whole thing with the Eagles defense is you can't get a pass rush going if the team is constantly in 2nd and 3 and 3rd and 1, or if it's first down, then first down, then first. And that's what it had been. You got to stop the run. And Eric Wilson was terrible at stopping the run. And by the way, his coverage wasn't good either. And that was supposed to be something that he was good at.
Yeah, exactly.
So he was inactive. Yeah. He was just doing nothing that was helping the team. So, by the way, credit to the coaches, because I know it's difficult when you have a free agent signing who's, not that he was a huge free agent signing, it was only 1 year, but you tend to want to play those guys and stick with them to legitimize the fact that you signed him. But no, they sat him down. TJ Edwards and Davion Taylor were the nickel linebackers mostly. And Alex Singleton wound up being kind of the dime linebacker who would blitz a lot in dime. They only played a couple of snaps of dime, and he would blitz a lot. Right.
Yeah.
And that's because I don't think Alex Singleton's your prototype dime linebacker because he's not great in coverage, but he knows where he's supposed to be and he knows how to blitz, and that's what they really used him for. Whereas if you had Davion Taylor there, he may have gotten lost in coverage a little bit because he's still learning the position.
Mm-hmm.
But the key was TJ Edwards being on there on first and second down. He's their best run stopping linebacker, right?
Yeah, right. No, we'd said that. What we had put on our pregame show is that we were expecting Taylor and Edwards again to be the linebackers, and Singleton playing sub, which is what happened. But we didn't know it was just going to be diamond specials, which we would learn after the game. But I would assume this is the way they're going to do this going forward. I just don't know if Davion Taylor's ready for this role. He played 60% of the snaps in this game. He didn't look lost. Like, they did a great job against DeAndre Swift. Once they shut him down, it was over because the Lions are so inept. They just have nothing. They have the worst receiver corps in the league. They're like not only the 32nd ranked receiver corps if you grade them by personnel. They're like there might be. I'm sure they're better college groups of receivers. I'm serious about that. That's how they're putting a group out there that should not be starting. Just it is what it is, and the Eagles knew this. Gannon knew this. They did more pre-snap disguise than they've done in I don't know how long, from what I understand.
Yeah.
They made Geoff hold on to the football. He looked just like Matt Ryan in week 1, where he's like, okay, where am I? I don't want to turn it over. Where am I going with it? And the play was over. They got to him. Their front was active, man. The Eagles' front was extremely active. Ryan Kerrigan had a very good game, way better than we knew Sunday night or Monday morning. He played well. This is probably his best game. In fact, no, it was his best game of the Eagle. He looked healthy.
Yes.
He very strong physically. He got up there. Sweat was a man in this game. Milt Williams, he's an interior player only, really now. He's basically playing inside. He played a lot because they were blowing him out. Cox didn't have to play a lot. He was active and he's explosive. They're definitely onto something with him. I understand that they had certain advantages, at center and at right guard, was it? Or no, right tackle. But man, the Milt Williams he had some get off in this game, and I now see why the Eagles liked him so much.
Yeah, the burst is there, the short area quickness is there. He's got the short hands, but that can compensate. We'll see, because it was kind of like short arms, right? He was absent for 6 weeks, then all of a sudden has a good game against a really bad team. So we'll have to see if he can continue to capitalize and take that momentum forward. But everything, to me, their defense was as disjointed as their offense was, because you couldn't have a pass rush if you did not put the opponent in pass rushing situations, and you couldn't put them in pass rushing situations until you stopped or started to stop their running game and take away the run and the easy play action that you saw that the Raiders have all day. So to get back to the linebackers, I think that and playing a safety in the box more, which he did this game.
He moved
the third play of the game. Yep. Anthony Harris dropped somebody behind. Not Anthony. I keep saying that. Marcus Epps shot through a gap and knocked somebody, DeAndre Swift, down. So that just showed you that Gannon was challenging more, bringing that safety down. Like you said, there was disguise where the safety would come late or the safety would be in the box and then go drop back late. So perfect. Exactly what you needed. Now, I personally think that they're caught between two worlds here. I wrote about this for my story on InsideTheBirds.com. Because if I were playing nickel and my sole purpose was to win games and not put evaluations on players, I would have TJ Edwards and Alex Singleton as my nickel linebackers. Like you said, from your source, Alex Singleton's a better linebacker than Davion Taylor right now. He just is. He might be their best overall linebacker now. So I would want Singleton and TJ Edwards on the field most of the time instead of Singleton and dime and Davion Taylor with TJ Edwards, because Taylor still has his ups and downs and doesn't really know what he's doing in the passing game as much. But they were able to mitigate that by this game by putting Singleton and dime and having Edwards there to stop the run and making it very one-dimensional for the Lions. But they're doing this because they want to groom Davion Taylor and see what they can get out of him, because he's tremendously athletic. But you know this. I mean, if you're trying to win a game and you're going up against a really good opponent and none of the context matters, you would play Alex Singleton more than Davion Taylor.
Well, I agree. Now here's the question. So we'll talk more about this on Friday's show. I'm off of what you just said. I'm fascinated to see how they're going to attack the Eckler. Eckler is he's only going to get 10 or 11 carries. They'll go with a couple of power backs in back of him, but they don't run the ball particularly well. The Chargers. I'm interested. They're very skilled at Jared Cook could still play at tight end. They've got good receivers. Mike Williams is having a career year. We know how great Keenan Allen is. He's probably going to be a Hall of Famer someday. I'm fascinated to see what Gannon has learned. Yes, it was the Lions, but he saw some good things out of some players who needed to step up. You mentioned Epps. Epps is the only player on defense to play every snap. That's the thing I don't understand. They were killing them. Why didn't he pull them?
That's a good point. I wonder if maybe they just didn't want, because Kevon Wallace had just come back, correct?
Sure.
Maybe they just didn't want to risk him getting hurt again. That's a good question. I don't know. They were short bodies there, right? Because at safety, it was really because they didn't have Anthony Harris, so they only had 3 safeties. So
Wallace, did he play?
Didn't he? I thought they activated him the day before.
I thought they did, but
I thought he played on special teams.
I was going to say because I did not see him on defense. So
I thought he did. I'll go back and check when I get a chance. But I can see why they were just kind of sticking with their 2.
Yeah, he did.
He
played. He played 16 snaps on defense. Yeah. So anyway, it was a dominant. It was obviously the best game of the year. It was different but similar to Atlanta offensively because they with Hurts they just want to get him comfortable. They got the ball out of his hands quickly. Had a high completion percentage. He did everything they asked him to do in that game. The defense did the skies in that game. It was really, until this game, the only game they had a high percentage of mixed. The other thing is they mixed their coverage up in this game. They did a lot of that in the first game, 2, 4, 6. They did in this game, zone drops, some man, mixed the coverages up. Poor Goff. Hawkinson had a ton of right. I get you. He's a program quarterback. I'll still say that you take him out of his comfort zone. He reminds me of Sam Darnold, man. When you get him, when he doesn't know where he's going with the ball, he really struggles, man. He's just not the guy who's a super processor. And the Eagles knew this, and they dominated. But I cannot wait for this Charger game because the Chargers are not playing well right now. There's an opportunity. The Eagles are 0-3 at home.
Right.
We'll see. We'll see if the weather's turning colder now. This is going to be a fun game now. This is going to be a fun game because we're gonna see, as you set up earlier, and I really agree with you. We're going to see what the coaches learn about themselves in this game, this past game.
No doubt about it. And of course, we will preview the game on the next Inside the Birds podcast that'll come out 6 a.m. Friday, and then give an even more comprehensive preview of the game on Sunday starting at 10 a.m. when it is myself, Adam, Jason Avant, and Greg Cosell. That should be a blast of a show. So that'll do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. Want to say big thanks to our producer, Hunter Brody. You can check out his work on YouTube. His channel is called Sports Talk with Broads. Find his content on broadsmedia.com. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.